Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Grace Holland. Opening statements began Wednesday in the trial of a man charged with murdering his daughter's aunt. WRAL's Chelsea Donovan was in the Johnston County courtroom for that and joins us now. Chelsea, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
So tell me a little bit about this case. I believe it happened within the last year or so. Who's the defendant in this trial?
Yeah, so this was a case that happened on St. Patrick's Day of 2024. The defendant is 50-year-old Dorian Thomas, who lived in a home sort of near Wilson Mills in part of Johnston County, and now he is on trial for first-degree murder.
Okay. And the woman that he is accused of murdering here is Emily Steinhoff James. So who was she?
So Emily Steinhoff would have been potentially his sister-in-law. So basically, Dorian Thomas and Hillary Lombardi, which is Emily's sister, they shared a 14-month-old girl together. That little girl was at Dorian Thomas's home here in Johnston County for the weekend, and he had planned to return her Sunday evening. But Hillary wanted to get the daughter back, and so she repeatedly had called Dorian Thomas multiple times that day looking to pick up her daughter. And so they kind of got into a texting war and a phone argument. So she brought her sister, Emily Steinhoff, along, who was a Raleigh resident, pretty big in the performing arts community in Raleigh, also an attorney and a former nurse. So she went with her sister, Hillary Lombardi, to pick up the little girl. And that is when sort of the tragedy ensued. And she was found dead on Dorian Thomas's front porch with a gunshot wound kind of to her side.
Right. And were there any other details about this that we knew before this trial, or sort of things that we were following going into this trial?
Yeah, so this was a pretty big case when it happened, just the sheer nature of this. And what was really interesting is after he was arrested on a first-degree murder charge, normally they're in jail under no bond, oftentimes until that trial starts, which could be months going into years. This was a case, though, that he really pretty quickly had a bond hearing, and the judge revoked the no bond, handed down a $150,000 bond, and he was, free on bail and has been for close to about 9 months. So that was one interesting key piece of this, and is also interesting when you're covering a trial like this where, the defendant is kind of walking out among the victim's family, very unusual. So that's really kind of the key piece that we knew going into this, is that he was not currently incarcerated.
Okay. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about what has played out in the courtroom so far. Chelsea, before the break, you were giving us the background of this case here. What was the mood like in the courtroom?
So obviously it's just a very polarized environment. You got probably about 6 or 8 people there on behalf of Dorian Thomas, his family. And then, of course, you've got the Lombardi family and the Steinhoff family pretty separated in the courtroom. We knew going in today it was going to be pretty emotional because they were going to play out the 911 calls that Dorian Thomas made that evening, show some body camera video, and also show some, really disturbing and graphic crime scene photos of the victim who was laying lifeless on the front porch of his home.
What did prosecutors argue in their opening statements using some of those elements that you just talked about?
So prosecutors believe this was premeditated murder, and they believe that because Hillary Lombardi and Dorian Thomas were set to have a custody hearing the next day he was trying to get full custody of the 14-month-old child. And so he believes that the state believes he intended to act out of malice, and was planning on basically pulling the trigger if there was a fight that ensued, which ended up happening. Now, the defense in this case has a different theory. They believe that Hillary Lombardi had been drinking that day, and she was banging on the doors, banging on the windows of Dorian's home. And so he picked up his phone and started recording all of this. And as he did so, he answered the door with Hillary kind of very emotional. She wanted to get her child back. And so they started kind of having an argument. Well, Emily Steinhoff, her sister, was in the car, noticed that it was kind of getting volatile. So she walked up. And basically what the defense is contending is that Hillary and Dorian got into a fight as he was holding a handgun, and it accidentally went off, and then it struck Emily Steinhoff, who was in the porch, and subsequently she died. So they believe that he was acting basically in self-defense for Hillary. A scuffle ensued, and then that trigger was pulled.
Right. It's striking that these are pretty different narratives, it sounds like, that they're arguing.
Yeah, very different narratives. You know, the prosecution says before she rolled up, that Hillary, when I say she rolled up, he, kind of cocked his gun and had it ready, and they say you can hear that on his recording. The defense, kind of argues against that and believes this was just purely accidental.
So how long are we expecting this trial to take?
Yeah, this is a trial where, jury selection took 2 full days, and they are expected, they believe, to wrap up, Monday or Tuesday of next week. So we're looking at just about a week's time.
Okay. And do we know anything about what the sentencing might be?
So he is facing a life in prison without the possibility of parole in this case in terms of a sentence if convicted.
Well, thank you so much, Chelsea. We appreciate it. And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us a part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. That's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.